Yeah. Good morning, students. Welcome to English class in our PVV program. To start, I would like to show you some English expressions used in the workplace because I believe when you complete your study, you will be working in industries or in other workplaces. So these expressions are the ones that you are going to use. First, let us see business introduction. For introduction, there are two kinds of introductions, informal and formal. Now let us start with informal. Informal, the sentences are very simple normally. Look at this. This is my boss, Mr. Stratford. Jared, this is my secretary, Barbara. Good to meet you. Nice to meet you too. I'd like you to meet my co-worker, Colin Beck. Colin, this is Susan Palmer. Nice to meet you. My pleasure. Have you met Jason? Jason, this is Teresa. Hi, I'm Jill Webson. I don't believe we've met. I'm Greg. So look at these sentences, all these expressions. These are used in informal situation. Now, if you see the sentences, normally the sentences used in informal is quite short. Let us see the example of the informal introduction as follows.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
This is my friend Timin, and Timin, this is my director, Mr. Andri.
Oh, hi, Timmy.
Hi, Mr. Andri.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Next, formal.
Good morning, sir. I'd like to introduce my friend Timin to you.
Hello. Good morning, Mr. Timin. It's a pleasure to meet you. How do you do?
How do you do, Mr. Andri?
Okay, now this the example of formal situation. You see the sentences in formal situation, it's quite longer. I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend, Mrs. Pleasant. Allow me to introduce myself, or allow me to introduce my colleague, Miss Winters. Let me introduce you to my colleague, Dean Richards. Mr. Richards, this is David Potter from Aerospace Incorporated. How do you do? How do you do? You see the difference? They say, how do you do? How do you do? It's a pleasure meeting you. And one thing, important body language to remember, where in formal situation, don't forget your smile, your eye contact, and firm shake hands. So this is to show that it is a formal situation. Now let us see the differences between informal and formal situations. In informal, it is quite simple. Only say, this is my boss, Mr. Stratford. You see also here, my boss. This is to show that it is an informal. If you compare here, it's not saying my boss, but my director, for example. I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend, Mrs. Pleasant. Allow me to introduce myself, or allow me to introduce my colleague. Let me introduce you to my colleague, for example. So, if you compare this informal and formal, in informal is quite short. This is my secretary. This is my boss. Enough. But in the formal ones, the sentences are quite longer. I'd like to introduce you to my dear friend. Allow me to introduce. Let me introduce. Then the responses, you see here, good to meet you in informal one. Or nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. But see the formal situations. The responses are, how do you do? How do you do? It's a pleasure meeting you. Quite longer. if you compare to nice to meet you. So this is the expressions we use for introduction in the workplace. Thank you very much.